Hello, in this video I will be showing you how to put together the 3D dog dish using the Simply Crafty SVG file. Once you have everything cut out, these are the pieces you'd have. And you see that we have the middle piece, that's the middle piece, and that long piece is the outside piece. So once you have it cut out, you want to go ahead and score it. And you want to score it to look like this. Now I happen to have I wanted the texture in the inside, so I actually scored it the opposite of how it naturally folds. So I had a valley fold, so you see I'm putting the textured part inside. It's up to you whether you want to go to that details, but I wanted that, or you could cut it upside down. And with this little side tab, when you glue it, you want to glue it on the back side, and the reason is you want to line up that inside tab fold to the opposite edge, make sure it's centered appropriately. But the reason you want to do it on that side is so it doesn't show when you look in the inside of the bowl, so that won't be visible. And the nice part is you can flatten that because it's a 10-sided. So 6-sided, 8-sided, 10-sided, you can flatten them usually even with a little bit of an angle. And I'm just folding those outside to get it ready for the next step. So the top will fold outward and the bottom tabs will fold inwards. That's what it should look like. So we're going to go ahead to make it easy. We're just going to add glue to these little tabs on the inside. And then what we'll end up doing is taking one of those two panels and sliding it in, making sure that the sides match up to where the tabs are. So you just want to make sure it's in correctly so each cutout side matches up with an edge. So you want to match it up on one side, and then what you'll do is just kind of push in the sides and go around. As you're going around, you want to push in the sides, make sure that the edge of that panel line up with the inside tab folds, and then applying pressure. And you can see it fits in there pretty well. This is a quick way to do something like this. And if you do have one tab that comes up, you can either add a little bit more glue or add more pressure. So you want to make sure those are good and secure, and then we'll add that glue on that bottom panel to cover all those tabs, because this will be the only thing that will show when you flip it upside down. And it also secures those tabs even further. Now, one of the reasons I didn't do a round one, like perfectly round, because it makes it harder for the next step. I mean, it's easy enough for this, but the next step is a little bit more difficult when you have a round. So I wanted to make it easy for everybody at different levels of making 3D crafts. So once we get to the top portion, you'll see what I mean by that. We're almost done with this, so we're going to add this little piece around here, and we're going to just glue it to those tabs on this side. What that's going to help is when we assemble the two pieces together. So when we finish the outside edge with that top portion, with the top panel, we'll attach it to that. I want to do it early so it would get good and dry and ready for the next step. So I always flip it over if I have a textured paper, and I know it's not going to be seen anyways really, but I like to glue the non-textured if I can to the tabs. It adheres better. So that's done, and we can put it aside until we're ready for it. And you could also apply a little bit more pressure to those tabs with your fingertips as you go along. So here's the larger piece. So I've already folded it, and just make sure you have good crisp edges on all your score lines. Just doing it again to show you where it all scores. So I already scored it. And instead of using cardstock, so I scored it first because it gives me an indication of how each paneled sections. But before you apply your paws, so I use vinyl. Just make sure you go up a little bit because we want enough space to be able to put that bottom trim. So if you go too far down, that trim will cover the paw. So you see right here, that trim's going to go at the bottom, so you want to make sure you kind of raise them a little bit. So it's up to you if you want to use these. I did use vinyl for this, so I'm applying it using a transfer tape. So it's just a white inside vinyl that I had laying around, and it's much easier to apply them because obviously they're separate cuts, so to do it with anything like cardstock would be a lot more difficult. I try not to incorporate a lot of vinyl items because I'm primarily a paper crafter, but of course most of us have all these things, at least the basics, black and white, because, you know, who hasn't personalized something with their die cutting machine? I don't know. I think most of us have. So now I just thought it's easiest to put those on first. And we'll go ahead and assemble the top piece. So I'm going to add a little glue to this first tab, and I want to anchor that top panel. So I'm going to line up this one edge to the tab fold here, right to the slightly above the tab fold, like really slight, but you want to make sure it's right in that section. You want to make sure it's good and secure before you start doing the next steps. Now you could, some people might glue the entire thing like the other edge and then glue it on, but I felt like this is easier for me to get my hands underneath. So I'm going to push these tabs down first to get it prepped. And then I'll add glue to just a couple tabs at a time. It's up to you what works for you and how fast your glue dries. You don't want to get to the last tab and have it dry. So I'm just going to carefully line up now each of these sections to the tab fold on that outside piece. And so I'm applying pressure to the tab underneath at the same time as I'm lining it up. And then we'll continue to finish gluing the other tabs. So again, you could have just glued it like I mean, it's up to you how good you are with that. Some people like to glue it all at once, where you kind of make it circular. I know it's not circular, it's 10-sided, but you glue the outside edge and then you can glue it on tab by tab that way, but I find it this way, it's easier for me to match up the edges to the tab folds and get it more accurate. It's one of the reasons why I didn't make it round as well, because you might be able to see the edges a little bit more. I mean, I'm not perfect here, but it gives it more of a rounded look even though it's 10-sided, and it's a little bit easier to put together in my opinion. Then I got to this last tab, I did it last, and then I fold in that side tab, make sure it's folded in. I'll be able to add glue to it by just flipping it over. And we'll just reach in there. And then just apply it, pressure matching that last edge up. So we're going to put the trim on next, but eventually we'll glue that on. But let's make sure we're going to put the trim on first because we can reach in really easily and rotate it. So the one thing about the trim is that it's circular. I mean, it has like a big arch. So doesn't have any scores in it or anything. I think it actually looks cleaner that way. So what I would do with this, or what I suggest, what my thought process when I designed with this, is to attach just a little piece on one side. Now it'll overlap at that point. So I would probably attach it where you have your seam. So you have the seams both in the back. So you want to get it good, just anchored on, and I'm kind of angling it down so it goes over that little and how it bends on the bottom. I'm trying to hide that best I can. But since it's round and this is not, the actual dish is not round, it's not going to completely hide it in places. So as you go around, you're just going to kind of guide it in your hand, and you're going to try to match it to the bottom edge best you can, and kind of lower it just a little bit so you can cover some of those where the scores are, where the folds are. So I'm just applying pressure as I go around. Do a little bit at a time, and then continue. The one thing, I just think it looks better rounded rather than having a score. And yes, at moments you probably will be able to see that green part at the very bottom, but what you can do is take a black pen or a chalk ink, which I did after this, to just chalk the bottom edges where the green is so the green doesn't highlight as much. And just continue around. But I was attempting to get a round look, and with this trim you kind of can get, it finishes it off for me, in my opinion. Then what it'll do is it'll just overlap when we meet the other side, but when you glue this last piece, just make sure it's lined up so it's the same width, so it doesn't look like a skew or anything. So just as you get up here, just make sure you line it up and add a little glue to that last part. Well, that's it for that. So just going to run my finger around it one last time. I don't want it pulling up anywhere. We're going to go ahead and just fit it in that middle piece. And you can see that's why we glued it together the way we did. We wanted to hide the tabs. So how I glued the outside is I put the tab underneath. The same thing for the inside. So when you look inside the bowl, you don't see the tab. These would make little good little treat bowls for a party or a little gift for a pet. You always personalize it with a pet's name too. You could really change this up into a cat bowl too. Just add some fish on the side. So you can see I'm just lining that up, and once I have it lined up, I'm just going to apply pressure. My fingertips just a bit too wide for this part, so I just used a chopstick to go around and apply the pressure. You want to kind of go towards the inside, make sure that it's hitting that inside edge. And that will finish this dog dish. There you go. All ready to use for either a small gift or maybe a party favor or something to that effect. This is just one of a couple of dog designs, pet designs we have out there. So if you're interested, go ahead and take a look at Simply Crafty SVGs and see if there's other things you might like to make. I appreciate you watching today. Thank you and have a great day.